Well, hello there and welcome to an Ignite Press book launch livecast. Super excited to have you here today and also our guest author, Matt Silverman. We're going to be talking about his new book, The Champions Network, a blueprint to expand your influence and spread big ideas in any organization. Now, before I bring Matt on, I just want to share a couple things. First, if you're watching this live or even in the recording, please feel free to add comments, questions, things like that. And we'll try to get that to Matt so that he can answer any of those questions. So please do that. We love to have that kind of feedback as we move forward with our live cast. Now, when we do these, we love to have the author on to ask questions and move forward. Also to let you know that if you have an idea for a book, if you've got something you would like to talk about, please just reach out to Ignite Press and we'd be happy to have that conversation. So without further ado, let's bring on Matt. Matt, it is great to see you today. Congratulations on your book launch day.
Thank you, Everett. It's really nice to be here with you. Today's a very, very exciting day. It's a long time coming. Very, very happy to join you today and very grateful for everything you've done and Ignite Press has done, your entire team, to get me to this point. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thanks for your hard work and diligence in creating what I think is really a fantastic book. Now, for the benefit of everyone watching, Matt is doing this live cast from his hotel room in Chicago. And if we get any glitches, it could be that. But Matt, tell us, why are you out in Chicago this week?
Yeah, thanks, Everett. So we're gonna do the best we can with hotel Wi-Fi. So I am originally, for those of you who know me, I'm originally from Chicago. It's my hometown, Evanston, Illinois. I live in the Tucson area now, but I'm in Chicago today for a couple reasons. One is I'm speaking at the Society for Corporate Compliance and Ethics big annual conference, and I'm speaking on the topic of building a champions network, specifically a compliance and ethics champions network within your organization. So I had the pleasure to speak yesterday as one of their keynote speakers on that subject for about an hour and a half, had a wonderful audience and a lot of people who were champions within their organizations looking to build champions networks within their organizations, everyone from mid-level managers and chief compliance officers and even some CEOs there to kind of hear the message, to hear my blueprint, and to talk about how they could build a better champions network. So that went fantastic. And tonight, in celebration of the book launch today, I'm going to be joining some friends, family, and colleagues at the Rosebud restaurant just up the street to celebrate the launch of the book. So, I am an Arizonan now, but I am always a Chicagoan at heart. So it's very exciting for me to be in my hometown to celebrate the launch of the book.
Well, now that's fantastic. And yesterday, I understand you had a pretty sizable room there. Do you want to tell us? It wasn't just one or two people watching your presentation there, was it?
We had a good crowd. It was about 250. The room holds about 250, and it was pretty packed. Pretty much standing room only. So that was very, very exciting for me to speak to that big of a group, to know that there is so much interest. And that's just within one industry, just within the compliance and ethics industry, just at one conference, to know that there's that much interest from people in learning how to build a champions network. And I was able to give away a bunch of free copies of the book yesterday prior to the actual book launch day. So that was very fun. A lot of people came up and took a free book from me and asked me to sign it, which was a big thrill. But yeah, it's always nice to see that the hard work and effort you put into, whether it's a speech or writing a book, that people really see the value in it and take a lot away from it. So I was very, very happy with the turnout yesterday at the session.
Yeah, excellent. Now, Matt, I'd like to take a step back. First, I want to make sure everyone understands that the book is available right now on Amazon, and they can pick up a copy of the Kindle version for a special launch price, and that's 99 cents. So paperback and Kindle are available there, and please go grab that. Now, Matt, before we dive into the book, I would like to find out a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you come to this place?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I'm originally from the Chicago area, from Evanston, born and raised. And then I went to college at the University of Michigan. Go Blue! I'm a proud alum. So, spent 4 years in Ann Arbor, and then went to law school after that. So, I am a practicing attorney today. I practiced in Chicago for about 4 years, then went to Washington, D.C. for a little while. I worked on Capitol Hill in the government. And for the last 13, 14 years or so, I've been in the corporate space, working mostly in-house at a few different companies. My area of expertise is broadly compliance, but more specifically trade compliance. So I've been working in international trade law a little over a decade now. And kind of the way that the book came about was in part because of that. I was asked to build champions networks, or sometimes they're called ambassador programs, at a couple different companies I worked at. I worked at General Electric. I worked at another company called Solvay, and I was asked to put together champions networks focused on trade compliance and how to make sure that people within our organization were advocating for trade compliance, that we were building a culture, really, a culture of compliance within the organization. And I took what I learned working within those champions networks, and it really helped me to develop not only the guidance in the book, but now I do some consulting as well for organizations who are looking to build champions networks. So that's kind of what brought me to the present day. My legal background has certainly helped me a lot in my experience in working within large and medium-sized organizations to build champions networks. Really, it's kind of come to fruition today in a book, which I hope will be valuable to a lot of people who are looking to build those networks within their organization.
Excellent. Now, I'd like to go, I think, back to the first conversation we had, Matt, when I had to ask you, okay, what is a Champions Network? How does it work? And so for the benefit of our audience, tell us, what is a Champions Network?
Sure. So some people know that term. In many ways, the term Champions Network is somewhat ubiquitous in certain industries and corporate settings and organizations. And then I'll talk to people and they just look at me with a blank stare when I say Champions Network. So
thank you. You just made me feel much better.
It's not just you, I promise. So even at this conference I was at today, people came up to me and said, I had no idea what a Champions Network was until I talked to you. So you spend so much time writing about it and working within them, you just start to think, oh, everybody must know what this is. But let me give you a kind of an overview, right? So first of all, they're called different things. Sometimes they're called champions networks. Sometimes they're called ambassador programs. I've heard them called liaison networks or focals. I like the word champions, and there's a couple different reasons. But the idea is you're in an organization. Sometimes it's in the corporate world, although I've seen champions networks in philanthropic and academic organizations. You're in an organization and you have a policy, a program, an initiative, an idea that you want to expand in your organization to hopefully change or reinforce the culture of that organization. And so the idea is that you are looking to find champions within that organization who can help you expand your ideas, who can help to support and champion your ideas, and really help you in turn to change the culture within your organization. So that's where the term champion comes from. It doesn't mean that you're the winner, that you vanquished all your foes. It's the idea that you are championing a certain idea or program or policy. That's why they're sometimes called ambassador programs. You're looking for people within your organization to be your ambassador, to be your representative. So I'll give you an example. I'm speaking this week, or I spoke yesterday, on building a champions network for compliance and ethics. Now, champions networks don't just apply to compliance and ethics, although I have a chapter dedicated in my book just to compliance and ethics. But so the idea is, if you're let's say a compliance and ethics professional, that's your subject matter expertise, that's your job 100% of the time, and you want to build a culture within your organization of greater compliance, where compliance and ethics are valued, where your programs and policies and initiatives are seen and people are aware of them and engaged with them. Well, if I'm one person or a department of one or two or three sitting in some site somewhere in the US or somewhere in the world, and I'm trying to change the culture of an entire organization, I can't do that by just writing a policy and asking everyone to follow it. I can't do that by putting in an email, let's all change the culture. Ready? Go. It doesn't work like that. So tone at the top is really important. You want your leaders and executives and managers to have, in this case, a culture of compliance. But if you really want to make a difference, if you really want to spread your ideas in your organization, you need to find those champions. And usually they're at the local level. So for me, as a compliance professional, as an attorney, I'm looking to HR, I'm looking to engineering, I'm looking to marketing and manufacturing, and I'm looking to those people who know their jobs and their responsibilities and their sites much better than I do. And I'm looking for them to help me spread compliance and ethics policies and programs and initiatives to champion them. But I'm also looking for them to come to me and say, you know, I know we're trying to start this program at this site. I know you're trying to spread this policy or this initiative within this department. Here's the best way to do that. I know my department. I know the culture of my site, my region, much better than anyone else, or probably better than you do, Matt, sitting 1,000 miles away in the legal department or the compliance department.
Right.
And those people help me to champion what I'm trying to spread. So that's the idea. You're utilizing people throughout your organization to champion those initiatives.
Okay, excellent. Now, in your book, you lay out the blueprint for creating effective champion networks to help spread an idea across an organization. Can you talk some about the psychology of this and or dive into some of the steps of the blueprint?
Yeah, so what I tried to do in this book, so first of all, one of the reasons I wrote the book was because I could not find anywhere else on the market a book about how to build a champions network. You can certainly find anecdotes and columns and articles and thoughts about it online, but this, as far as I know, is the first book on how to build a champions network. And I didn't just want to write a book and say, here's how to do it. I knew that was a part of it, the how. So I do give you the how and I give you the 6-step blueprint. But what I tried to do before that is really give you the why, meaning why it works. Why is building a champions network the best way to expand your ideas and influence people throughout your organization? And I'll give you kind of the short version, and this is all in chapter 1 and 2 of the book. The first part is there is over 100 years, believe it or not, of academic research on how ideas spread within organizations. So whether or not you're buying this book because you want to build a champions network or not, you can just buy this book and learn how to spread ideas and how to influence other people. So I talk a little bit in the book about some academic research that's been done in a number of different areas and sectors where they have found that the best way overwhelmingly to influence others is not necessarily by a mandate. It's not by leaders telling other people, here's what they have to do. It's through a movement. So it's the idea that if you want to truly influence people, you have to start at the local level, or at least get local buy-in, because people look to what others who they know are doing. They look to their colleagues and their friends and people within their departments and sites and people that they work with every day. And they oftentimes are more influenced by those people and what they're doing than by corporate policies or leadership, et cetera. It's important to have good policies. It's important to have, strong leadership. But really what this book is about is a bit of a almost like grassroots, and certainly tone at the middle as opposed to tone at the top. So I give a little bit of the psychology of that. I talk a little bit about human nature, how we're all in some ways we conform to what others around us are doing. We look to what others are doing and we adopt those behaviors. That's a big part of a champions network. And then I lay out a 6-step blueprint after I talk about the psychology. So my 6 steps, and they may be different for every organization, but the 6 steps that I provide, I think, are applicable to almost any organization. Getting leadership commitment, setting up some kind of a network structure, making sure to recruit champions. You can't have a champions network if you don't have champions. I talk about step 4 is training champions, making sure they know what their responsibilities are and how to carry them out. And then I talk about step 5, which is arguably the most important step, which is implementing it. You've done all this prep work. Now, how do you put it into effect? How do you make sure that your champions network thrives and sustains? How do you make sure that your champions stay engaged? And then I talk toward the end about putting metrics in place, ways to measure the success of your champions network so that you truly do have a network that can be sustained in the long term.
Excellent. Now, you did just answer one of the questions that had come up. Malia had asked, which of the 6 steps do you think is most important? And it sounds to me like implementation. Implementation is the one.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, you really can't have a network if you don't actually implement it. But I would say all of them to some degree are incredibly important. You know, if you don't have that initial leadership buy-in, you're going to face a lot of pushback, a lot of resistance. It's going to be much harder to get your champions network up and running. Same thing with metrics. The last step, really important to measure, really important to be able to show your leadership, especially if you're looking to get budget for it. Really important to show your leadership the impact that your network is having. But yeah, if I had to pick one, certainly you can't have a champions network if you don't actually implement it in some degree. So there's a lot I talk about in step 5 in terms of how to communicate, how to make sure people within your organization know that your network even exists, right? That's all part of implementation. How to make sure you have a good line of communication and dialogue and keep your champions engaged. So all 6 are very important, but those are some of the most important steps.
All right. In fact, so you made me think of this, you know, people in general, but it seems like businesses specifically have a challenge where they're really good at starting things, but not finishing things.
Yeah.
But when you speak to implementation, I get it. Have you seen organizations that have gone through the other 4 steps and then just last 2 steps, they just fall off the cliff?
Yeah, so I have seen organizations that I've worked for, not with, no organization that I would ever consult for. I wouldn't let them fall off that cliff. But I have certainly seen either organizations that I've worked within, or I have tangentially heard of others through friends and colleagues and other professionals who have come to me very disappointed to say, you know, we put all this work into recruiting our champions and to training them, and then we can't get it up and running, right? We can't actually get it implemented. Now, I would argue, or I would say, in those cases, it's because they probably missed a couple of the other steps. In other words, I have seen organizations who have started to recruit champions, and they've even started to, in some ways, train their champions. And then what happens is they realize, oh, we don't have the leadership support that we need. And then it gets blocked, and then it gets stopped. And that's why I say it's really important to get that leadership support at the beginning, because then you don't face that roadblock down the road. Or I've seen people try to start champions networks where they recruit them and start to train them, and maybe they even have that leadership support, but they realize their ideas are kind of out there in the ether. They don't really have a structure to their network. They don't know exactly how they're going to train their champions. They don't have ways to keep their network organized and efficient. People don't know about the network. So they've kind of missed that other step, which is step 2 is you really have to have that structure in place ahead of time. And for me, a structure can be as simple as, you know, putting together a network charter that says, here's the purpose of our network, here's the scope of our network, here's the responsibilities of champions, here's the responsibilities of the network leader, so that it's very clear and understood. Here's how we're going to communicate with each other. Here's how we're going to roll this out. So that's where I have seen, to some degree, networks fail, at least initially, because they're doing step 2 and 3, or they're doing step 1 and 4, but they're missing something else. And that's really where I came up with the idea of these 6 steps, because I think for the most part, if you go through all of them, and certainly if you go through those first 4, by the time you're ready to implement, you will really be ready to implement.
You know, what you said made me think of this. Step 1, if you don't get step 1 right, determining the scope of what you're doing and everything like that, then you can't get step 6 right.
That's
right?
right.
How can you measure the metric if you haven't established objectively your criteria for success? Um, and so I get it. It's like those first 3 or 4 are very foundational to the success of the last few steps. And without you skip one, then it crumbles, I suppose.
It is, yeah. It's really kind of a domino effect where you don't have a strong base to support it, and or maybe a house of cards is a better example. You don't have that strong base, and you're trying to build and build, and it'll fall down if you don't have that strong base. And you make a good point with metrics. I put metrics at number 6. It's the last step, but I always remind people, don't forget, if you don't have a baseline to measure your metrics against, they're somewhat useless, right? So I can say a year in to a champions network, okay, I've got my champions network up and running. We're 6 months in, we're 1 year in. Let's take some metrics. Let's measure our success. And I always tell people, you got to be doing some of that measurement ahead of time before you start your network, at the beginning of the launch of your network, so you can get an idea of the culture of your organization, whether it's health and wellness initiatives, whether it's I just spoke at a conference a few weeks ago on champions who are trying to build more inclusive cultures in the DEI space. So if you want to measure the inclusivity of your organization through your champions network, but you haven't measured that either quantitatively or qualitatively at the beginning, what are you measuring it against? So even though step 6 is metrics, that metrics really factors in much earlier if you really want to get a baseline to measure against.
All right. I am putting in the chat log a link to the book where people can go buy the book. And I just want to remind people that it is available now, where you can pick it up on Amazon, where the Kindle's set at a special launch price of 99 cents. It'll be there through today. After that, it's no guarantees about how long that's going to be there. They'll be going up very shortly. So grab your copy today of that. Now, Matt, I think we would be remiss if I didn't give an opportunity for people to know how to get a hold of you. So if they want to reach out to you and learn more about Champions Networks, or engage you and your business to help them establish Champions Networks, where do they go?
Sure. So there's a few different ways to reach out to me. One, you can certainly find me on LinkedIn. You can also email me, matt@blueprintorg.com. That's matt@blueprintorg.com. We also have a website for the Blueprint organization that is literally launching today. It's the Blueprint.org, or sorry, blueprintorg.com. It's a brand new website. I have to make sure to memorize that. Blueprintorg.com. You can find out more about what we do at the Blueprint organization. Some of our advisors who help to advise on everything from building health and wellness champions networks to corporate compliance, to trade compliance, to customer engagement and satisfaction. We've got a range of people, cybersecurity, a lot of different advisors who work with me at the Blueprint organization to make sure that we can help you build a champions network that'll be efficient, effective, and sustainable in the long term. So matt@blueprintorg.com is the best email. The Blueprint organization, the blueprintorg.com is our website.
All right, very good. I put your email and that website into the chat log there.
Great.
So we have just a couple minutes left before we have to jump off, and so I thought I would ask you, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, so you please feel free to wave off if you would like. Is there a story that you would like to share, a success story of Blueprint Networks in action? I know you've worked with a number of clients over the years, and I guess I should have prepped you for this, but is there a story that you'd like to share, or an example of one of these in action?
Sure. I'll give you a story. This was when I was working in-house. So this wasn't a client who I was consulting with. This is when I was working in-house for a company previously. And I was, I'll leave the name of the company confidential. So it was a large company, over 30,000 employees. I was brought in essentially to build a champions network. It wasn't my only job, but it was a really, really big part of what they had asked me to do. And this job in itself was in many ways the impetus for what became with the book. So I was brought in to build a champions network. The organization had a number of other champions networks already. They had one for ethics, specifically for ethics. They had one for cybersecurity, one for health and wellness, one for safety, and they wanted to build a compliance champions network. So they brought me in, and I started to build it. And what I did was I skipped step number one, right? I did not get that leadership support. I started to recruit champions. I started to train champions. We got somewhat into the implementation phase. And then an interesting thing happened. I started to get emails and phone calls from people, mid-level managers, other department heads and leaders saying, what is this? What are you doing? What is this about building a champions network? Why are you trying to take, people away from their full-time jobs and devote them even an hour or two a week or a month to compliance? And what I came to find was that this project that I had been brought on to start didn't have any approval. It didn't have leadership support. It was an idea that someone in the compliance department had and thought, well, let's hire someone to do this. And that's really why I make the first step of my book, getting that leadership support, because trust me, I know firsthand, I don't want people to make the same mistakes I made, because I had to do a lot of backtracking. And a lot of the work that I put in, including budget and money and time, was not necessarily wasted, because in the end, we were able to develop a network, but it really was a lot of backtracking and a lot of going back to people and having to make the argument for why this network was important. And I had to do, not apologizing, but I had to do a lot of, hey, listen, I should have come to you ahead of time. I didn't realize that this didn't have support. And that's not a good way to start a network. The best way to start is to come to people, mid-level managers, department heads, people who you're going to be asking, can I have an employee of yours part-time, essentially? The best way to start it is going to those people initially and saying, we're looking to start this. What do you think? Who within your group could be a champion? How can you help to support us? Give me some of your ideas. Your department better than I do, your site, your region. So the best way you can really start it, and I've learned this the hard way, is get that leadership support ahead of time, because I didn't do that in one network that I worked within. And now when I consult with clients, that's the first thing I say is, do you have leadership support? Because that's where we need to start before we do anything else.
It sounds like a great lesson. I can totally see it. And you've experienced the challenges and the successes on both sides of that over these years. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I'm grateful for your trust in trusting us to get your book out. And congratulations again on your book launch, on your presentation yesterday, and the home run of handing out a bunch of books to a room of 250 people. And fantastic. Thanks for coming on. We will keep this launch day rolling. And we're just excited to see how it all plays out. So thanks again, Matt, for coming on.
That's wonderful. Thanks to everyone for all your support. And thank you, Everett, and your entire team for making this day possible. I appreciate it.
You are more than welcome. So just as a reminder, you can pick up Matt's book on Amazon right now, where the Kindle is 99 cents. If you want to reach Matt directly, you can do that at matt@blueprintorg.com, matt@blueprintorg.com. That is also their new website, blueprintorg.com. So please go check that out. Thank you very much for joining us on our live cast today. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.